Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague trying to work out if he can take over his local poke gym with a Pidgey to Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I have no idea what that means.
I know, that's why I said it, because I didn't think you'd know.
I mean, I live in St. Helens. If I want to go out and look at little monsters, I can.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon Go's taking over the world, Dutton, and obviously you laugh in the face of games, so you obviously aren't involved. The only technology that you're involved in is Facebook and Twitter, and it's really only Twitter.
I mean, I just think these people are wasting their lives with this thing that doesn't matter. While I'm here talking and playing fantasy football.
Exactly, Dutton, exactly. Get your priorities, people. Get your priorities sorted. Dutton, this week, we should know what we're talking about, maybe, possibly. It's the NFC East. But if we don't know what we're talking about, we've got a unprecedented, possibly four-time guest in Mr. Ross Tucker, podcast king of the world, seen on many different formats, but also, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, supported the Eagles as a child and played for both Washington and Dallas. So
and he must have some tenuous New York link.
It allows us some insight into what's going on. So we're going to give our thoughts on the NFC East. Then we're going to hand it over to Ross and we're going to have a quick chat, see what he thinks about it. And also, what his issue is with Dip. Let's not beat around the bush. That's really why we're calling them up.
Pretty much.
I mean, no weird word this week. We're just going to get straight on with the show. And let's just get straight on with the NFC East. Starting at the top, quote unquote, in alphabetical order, but the team that we love the most, the Dallas Cowboys, Neil. Question really on the Cowboys, Dutton, was last season all about injuries, and are suspensions this year's injuries?
I think it's hard to say that last year was all about injuries. I mean, they didn't play well. They had no pass rush. Their secondary was a disgrace, but it has been for years. It was just a question that it was the same, smoke and mirrors that they tried the year before, but they had a more efficient offense. They had DeMarco Murray running it till he puked. Tony Romo having an MVP season despite passing the ball 100 less times. And they had Des Bryant. All of a sudden, you take away Murray and put in Joseph, I've got serious problems, Randall, Darren McFadden, and a combination of a wreck of Tony Romo, Matt Castle, Brandon Weeden, and Kellen Moore. Well, you're not winning many games. It was just those last three names, pretty much. So injuries didn't help, but aside from a few, a great offensive line, which they have, this isn't a good team.
See, you say that, Dutton, and I tend to agree. And obviously, with suspensions, as we record this, looks like the Randy Gregory suspension is going to go from 4 to possibly 8, if not more. Vegas seems to disagree with us, Dutton, and it gives Dallas in favourites to win the division at 9.5 as the over. Road schedule is 49ers, Packers, Browns, Steelers, and Vikings. At home is Bears, Bengals, Ravens, and Bucks. Just for information, people, Mike Clay, who we've had on the show before, gave out some stats last night, and Dallas were in the bottom 5 in easiest schedules. Dutton, 9.5. What say you?
I mean, I'm stunned that Vegas would, overhype the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, who would have thought this could happen? See, the one thing we know about the NFC East, as I say, the division we call home, is that since the Eagles' dominance of the early 2000s, it's a very, very shifting landscape. Obviously, there's no team has retained the title since the Eagles in 2003-4. So would it stun me if the Cowboys won it? No, because it's a crap division. But 9.5, no, I'm going to take the under.
I just look at it and think if we just road games against Packers, Steelers, and Vikings, I'd say they're probably not favoured in any of them. Probably not favoured at home to the Bengals. Then if they go, that's 4 losses, say, and we expect them to go 4-2 in the division. Everyone usually goes 3-3. There's 9-7 before we've even talking to the fact they have no defense again this year. Okay, they've got Romo, they've got Des Bryant, they've got Ezekiel Elliott, so they've got offensive weapons and they can score points, but are they going to be able to stop anyone? I don't really know, and 9.5's a lot, and I don't see it being 9.5. I see it being under. I see them being everyone's favourite Dallas 8-8 Cowboys. I
mean, Jimmy Kemsky, at Jimmy Kemsky, him of stick figures and, the phillyvoice.com, did tweet out earlier, this is the Dallas Cowboys' last 5 second-round picks, okay? Bruce Carter, gone. Gavin Escobar, 26 career receptions. DeMarcus Lawrence, suspended. Randy Gregory, suspended. Jalen Smith, IR.
I love the gives people a second chance, but I think that that second chance is working better in Arizona than it is in Dallas right now.
Well, yeah, because Arizona aren't dysfunctional, and so they don't bring these people into an air of dysfunctionality. They bring them into an environment that fosters, youth and experience and gets the best out of both. It's not we'll do this because I'm Jerry Jones. No, they are the poster child of the mediocre NFC East, because since 1997 you won't find a more mediocre team.
As they are basically 500.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy star Dalton Dallas Cowboys. Who is Dallas Cowboys fantasy stud?
Well, we're going to assume that he stays fit for 16 games. It'll be Des Bryant. Des Bryant he's one of the contenders to be, the fourth wide receiver in a wide receiver heavy group of 3. That if you in that first round, I've said in the past that I'd take AJ Green over Des Bryant because I think Green will see more targets. So I like, Bryant inside that. He's very touchdown dependent. It's not very touchdown dependent. So that's not fair. It's just he does an awful lot of his work inside the 20. He doesn't do that much heavy lifting compared to the likes of Julio, Antonio Brown between the 20s. But obviously, if you're going to take the traditional approach to drafting in fantasy football and look to take a running back early, then all signs point to it being Ezekiel Elliott, because, as we say, it's a beastly offensive line, and they've shown they're going to pound a single running back, and he's going to get his receptions. He's a very good pass blocker. So it really depends on your poison. If you want to take a Cowboy in the first round, depending on, your particular strategy, Des Bryant or Ezekiel Elliott.
Who's the fantasy dud on the Cowboys done?
It's Terrence Williams. He's never breaking out, people. Let's get over this. It's not going to happen. He had a nice season last year as like a backup, and he did step up when, Des went down, but that's all he's going to give. This team does not want to pass the ball 600 times. It's going to feed Bryant when it can. It's going to feed Witten, who's, still a good red zone threat. It's not going to spread the ball around. It's going to be Cole Beasley and Terrence Williams feeding off scraps. Steer clear.
Dallas Cowboys. Vegas says 9.5. Me and Dutton are shocked by them being a popular team to bet on in Vegas. Not. We both picked the under, probably 8-8, 7-9. They're mediocre. They have been mediocre since Jera sacked Jimmy Johnson, really. I know Barry Switzer won a Super Bowl, but let's be brutally honest, that was Jimmy Johnson's team. Fancy stud, depends what you're doing. Wide receiver heavy, go Des Bryant. If you want to run him back early doors, get Ezekiel Elliott. Fancy dud, Terrence Williams. It's not happening, people. You need to accept it. It's not an issue. It's just one of them things. Dutton. Let's move on. Let's get on to the New York Football Giants. The question on the Giants is, will the defensive overhaul actually give the Giants a chance this year? As that last year, their defense was nothing short of putrid.
Well, we all know that all the problems have gone away because Tom Coughlin's no longer head coach. That's the only thing they've changed. He was the problem.
I think you're right. Obviously, I'm sensing your sarcasm, but they obviously decided that talent was also a problem on the defensive side of the ball and spent an absolute fortune on the likes of Olivier Vernon and Janoris Jenkins. So they brought players in. The question is, do those players allow the Giants to be any good?
Well, they only have to look within the same division to see how successful a strategy it is to overspend on free agents to fulfill positions of need. So, what better blueprint could they have than the 2011 Dream Team Eagles?
And every Washington team from about 2001 to 2009.
Yeah, I mean, will they be better on defense? You'd hope so. But an awful lot rests on the fact that how credible a threat do offenses have to consider Jason Pierre-Paul? If you can just say, "Oh, do you know what? He's going to be okay because he can't beat a single man." You can double up on, the likes of Vernon, and the pass coverage is awful. They've had some really, really abysmal secondary play. It's not a good defense still. It's got better names in it, but Steve Spagnuolo, I mean, his career stock was all-time high after the Super Bowl, in 2007 with the NASCAR package and the four great pass rushes they had. But look, since then he's done absolutely nothing, and he has overseen two of the worst defenses in NFL history with the Saints and the Giants. So I just don't see what the likes of Vernon and Jenkins can do to really overcome the skill deficit. They're going to score, tons of points, because they're also quite balanced on offense. They do try and run the ball. They, I think 10th in rushing attempts last year. Didn't do very well because they insisted on giving the ball to Andre Williams at times, which is hilarious. But they're going to score points because they've got one of the best receivers in the game. So they'll be in games.
They'll be in games, and that sounds like a thing for fantasy viewers, that if you want, pick one off of the Giants and not the other. From a Vegas point of view, Dutton, Giants are slap bang in the middle 8. Road games against Vikings, Packers, the Los Angeles Rams, Browns, and Steelers. Home games against the Saints, Ravens, Bengals, Bears, and Lions. Giants are 8. What say you, Dutton?
I'm going to go under, but probably only just because that home slate sounds quite nice. The away slate sounds...
That home slate is awful. So in Mike Clay NFL, double mention on the pod, said that one of the other top 5 teams for the easiest schedule was the Giants, and you can see why when you've got Saints, Ravens, Bears, and Lions at home, and you got the Browns on the road. That's fantastic.
The only problem is that the Giants haven't been able to take care of business inside the NFC East. I think they are 1-5 against the Eagles in the last 3 seasons, and that's a 5-game losing streak as well. So the Eagles have had their number. I know the Washington generally can lift their game for them, and it just seems that they always get involved in epic shootouts with the Cowboys and usually end up splitting the series. So they're not going to run away with it. But again, 7-9 could keep them in this division hunt.
7-9. If they go 7-9, they're probably still talking about winning a division like mid-December, which is not good. But this is where this division stands. 8-8's a good number. I'm with you, Dutton. I look and think they struggle against the Eagles. They actually do very well against Washington. I think Washington have only won twice in the last 10. They split with Dallas. Even if they went 3-3. Vikings, Packers, Steelers lose to the Bengals. You're staring 8-8 in the face. I'm not going to push. I will take the under at 7-9, but push seems pretty good.
I mean, obviously, we don't want to harp back on history because this is not the 2011 Giants. It's not even the 2011. But if there's one team you and I don't want to get to the postseason because we know what they'll do, it's the Giants.
It is done. It is. We flip over to the fantasy side of the New York Football Giants. Who is the fantasy stud, Dutton? Is it the one and only Odell Beckham Jr.?
Well, it has to be. I mean, he scored, no one scored more touchdowns than him since he entered the league. Last year, apparently, he started the season slowly because he was only averaging 96 receiving yards a game. Oh, boo, friggity who. He's just, he's a special player. He's awesome in the red zone. He's not that big. He has got huge hands. They are absolutely huge. He was on Sky Sports News with Wednesday fan David Garrido, and his hands are obscenely large. He's going to go, if he went first overall, you'd have no qualms. You couldn't argue. He's that good. He's probably a lock for 1,300 yards and over double-digit touchdowns. And, even though he's probably going to get double coverage, like it bothers him.
Fantasy dud, Dutton. Have you already given it away?
I have given it away. It's Andre Williams. It's not a sleeper. He's asleep. Better let him rest. Apparently he's primed to bounce back this season. Bounce back from what? He's crap. You don't bounce back from being crap if you are crap. The only thing you can bounce back from is bouncing back off the back of his own offensive lineman into his own backfield for a 3-yard loss. Terrible, terrible player. No reason to start him because he went to Boston College, because Coughlin's gone. Let him go. He will not be taking work away from Jennings, Shane Vereen, because Vereen's just in it to pass. Andre Williams, trying to see him catch the ball. Just imagine, putting oil all over your hands and then trying to catch wet soap. That's Andre Williams in the passing game. Paul Perkins will take work from all of them, but Williams might not make the roster and probably shouldn't.
New York Football Giants, Vegas say 8. Me and Dutton say just under. I'm hedging. I want to hedge to a push, but pushes for girls. So we're both going to go under, probably 7 and 9. Fancy stud. Who else? It's Odell Beckham Jr. And fancy dud, just in case you didn't realise, is Andre Williams. And if you were unsure, Dutton doesn't really like him.
It's not personal.
Boop, boop. Fanboy alert. Boop, boop. Fanboy alert. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, Dutton.
These drops are getting worse.
What should we expect from Peterson? Is it Peterson? Is it Peterson? Is it Pedersen? What's his name?
Doug.
Doug.
Dougie.
What should we expect from Dougie in year 1?
Dougie hugs. A slower pace of life. Essentially, we've the Eagles bombarded the league with plays for 3 years, going at the speed of light, not huddling, not audibling, not changing plays at the line, whatnot. That's gone. That's something that's the real San Francisco treat now. Peterson, as we say, has come from a team and a head coach that could run a 2-minute drill inside 7 weeks. Just about. I just imagine. I mean, the most exciting thing about this team for me is what Jim Schwartz is going to be able to do with the defense. I think if the defense can perform up to the standards expected of him and of the likes of Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Jordan Hicks returning, then the offense can do enough to win them games. They're just not going to be very, they're not going to blow teams away.
Have we just described the Philadelphia Eagles as the Kansas City Chiefs?
They wanted Andy Reid back, basically, so they went and got I was going to say Reid Light. We're all Reid Light, and basically said, okay, we'll it worked once, we'll do it again.
Me and you in the same pair of trousers as Reid Light done. That dude's ginormous.
Yeah. It's just not a very exciting team on offense.
We put it out there. It's not going to be exciting, and the question is how many quarterbacks start for the Eagles this year.
As I say, if the defense can carry the team, then there's no reason why Bradford. Well, there is one reason why Bradford won't play all 16. Injury, of course. If the Eagles can stay in the hunt in this crappy division, Bradford is the first choice. He's the starter until pulled. But if he, if he face plants and inside of, the first few weeks of October, it's gone, then it'll be Daniel. That's right. His name's Chase Daniel, not Daniels. The number of time I'm hearing Daniels, it's really winding me up. God knows how he feels. If Daniel then decides, that, he can't cut it, then the last few, I think it was pointed out that week 14, the Eagles play the Seahawks. Well, I'm not throwing a rookie in week 14 if the season's, even if the season's gone, especially if the season's gone. So it would be likely that he probably would see action after that. But all things being equal, Carson Wentz will not dress this season. So there's that.
Carson Wentz won't dress. It's probably more likely that me and you don't dress and we go naked to Philadelphia and watch a game. Start in December.
No one needs to see that.
No one does, Dutton. No one does. Vegas 7. The road schedule is Bears. I don't know why I'm telling you. Bears, Lions, Seahawks, Bengals, Ravens. Home games against the Browns, the Steelers, the Vikings, the Falcons, and the Packers. 7, Dutton.
Under.
How much under?
1.
is this a top 10 draft?
No.
Will he be picking top 10 next year?
No. I think, given the inconsistencies of the offense and the lack of star power, this is a 6-win team. The defense can only do so much. It's just a question of, a good example is what Frank Reich's former team, the San Diego Chargers, did to the Chip Kelly offense in 2013. Possess the ball for 40 minutes, score on every possession, and keep the other team's possessions down. Granted, they only won by 3 points, but if you can score on every possession and really drag the clock out, you might win more than 6. I just think it's a big rebuilding year, and obviously it's a bigger rebuilding because wherever the Eagles finish, they aren't picking in the top 10 next year, are they? Cleveland will be enjoying that one.
So Cleveland fans rejoice. Jay Mahal, Brandon Selleck, Sam Bradford, Zach Ertz, Jordan Matthews, Ryan Matthews. Does anyone remember when that would have said? Would it have?
You can't remember.
Would have said LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin. It doesn't say that anymore. And I know this defense is good, and I grant you that. And I look and I say, yeah, got really talented players. Fletcher Cox, as you said, Connor Barwin, Brandon Graham, good players. Malcolm Jenkins has been very good. There's some dude called N. Carroll II at cornerback though, and there's still a guy called B. Maxwell on the other side.
Is there?
That according to the ESPN depth chart, he's the starting right corner.
ESPN bang up to date.
Is he cut?
When Baron Maxwell was traded to the Dolphins with Kiko Alonso.
Oh, he was, yeah. Who's that then? Okay, whatever. Who is the right cornerback then?
The right cornerback it's a bit much of a battle. There's second round pick from last year, Eric Rowe.
Yeah.
There's Leidis McKelvin, or there's is it Brandon or one of the Brookses, but it's probably going to be Eric Rowe.
They couldn't stop anyone throwing the ball on them last year. I don't see that really changing. Obviously, they've got a defensive line and linebacker core that's good, but I'm looking and I'm going. Road game against the Seahawks, enjoy that, by the way. Road game against the Bengals, enjoy that one. Home game against the Steelers, home game against the Vikings, home game against the Falcons with Julio Jones, home game against the Packers. You got to play Des Bryant. The only game that Deshaun Jackson is guaranteed to turn up in is the Washington-Philadelphia game in Philadelphia. Let's not forget about Odell Beckham Jr. I see what you're saying, Dutton. I like your optimism. Let's be honest, though. Last year you said that this team was going to go 13-3, so I'm not sure we can get away from the fanboy result. It's not the biggest fanboy conversation I've had today, but we're not going to get onto that because we're not talking about the AFC East.
I mean, it is important though to remember, all the Super Bowls that Maclin, McCoy, and Deshaun Jackson have won since leaving Philadelphia.
I'm not suggesting that they have won a load of Super Bowls. Thanks for that cool story, by the way. That was really interesting. And what I'm saying is, I'm looking at the team and it's devoid of talent. I think that's an issue.
It can be.
I'm just, I look and think, they've got a bye week 4. That's not a good time to have a bye week if you're Sam Bradford. I look and I'm thinking you're going to win 5 games if you're lucky. They might win more, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on that. But
no, you're not.
I am, because you know what, you enjoying your team and you being angry is always better when you enjoy your team. That's just fact. But we'll have to wait and see. I guess I just look and think they're not very talented. What's the issue here? Can it get any better? No. I expect Carson Wentz to play, and I'd be stunned if he didn't. As you said, week 13 or 14, they play Seattle. I would expect them to be in after that, if not before, because Sam Bradford's not very good, and you've just given every draft pick you have for the next couple of years to get Carson Wentz. So why is he sitting on his arse? And that's me, Paul from Liverpool, not Johnny, fanboy from Philly, who's on his 15th cheesesteak. He's calling WIP or whatever it is in Philly and screaming at the guy saying, "This guy's a bum, get him out."
Just remember, you can't sit on your arse without Carson.
Dutton, Philadelphia Eagles, I've said they're devoid of talent. Who's their fancy stud?
Well, again, it'll be low volume. He's not going to finish wide receiver 1, or probably even in the top, in the top echelon. But it'll probably be Jordan Matthews, despite the ludicrous claims that if he plays in the slot in a Doug Peterson hybrid, West Coast hybrid, he'll lose 200 snaps. No, he won't. That is a ludicrous thing to say. They will mould the offense to make sure that the most talented receiver does get the ball. Obviously, he's going to be a slot receiver. He's going to play out the slot. It's hard to run your team through a slot receiver. I know it's very, very rare, but he's a reliable target. He has got something of a rapport with Sleeves, and he's a good red zone threat. He scored 11 red zone touchdowns in his first 2 years in the league. So, yeah, he's probably going to be the star because he's the best bet to play 16 games.
Dutton, who is the fantasy dud?
One of his stablemates is Ruben Randall, who apparently was the target for many interceptions that Eli Manning threw because Randall was in the wrong place and didn't think this was a problem, which is a bit like prematurely ejaculating and finding it amusing, I suppose.
Interesting.
Yeah, he scored 8 touchdowns last year, but he's another one. He's like Terrence Williams. He's never going to break out. He's on a 1-year prove-it deal. But if Peterson's offense is anything like Andy Reid's in Kansas City, and to be honest, for most of his career, because he does spread the ball around a lot, a fact from Rotoviz Radio that in 17 seasons as a head coach, only 4 players have gone over 1,000 yards in Andy Reid's teams. It's just not going to be able to prop up running backs, 2 wide receivers and a tight end, and that's pretty much what Doug Peterson's going to want to feed. So he may chip in with the odd touchdown here and there, but I can't see him being a factor.
Philadelphia Eagles, with your non-fanboy alert message there, Vegas says 7, Dutton says under, I say big under. I think the Cleveland Browns are going to have 2 picks in the top 6 next year, their own and Philadelphia's. Fantasy stud is Jordan Matthews, and fantasy dud is Ruben Randall. Partial fanboy alert. Whoop, whoop. Washington's semi-professional football team, or as they are now this year, for at least 1 year only, Neil, the Washington professional football team.
Does that mean they pay to get proper drops?
Let's find out. Question we have done is, was last year's success a blip or the start of something?
Well, the past 20 years would suggest to me that it's a blip, as the Washington have not exactly strung together consistent seasons of success. Was it first division title since 1999, or was it the second?
Second, I think, since 99. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in keeping with the theme, that the only team to I may be incorrect, the only team to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. You're going for every single division title you've won since then has been with a different quarterback as well. So well done with that.
Thanks.
It's again, we always come down to this. It's is Dan Snyder still locked in the cupboard? If he is, then this will be okay. As long as Washington can compete, which they've shown they can do, and they've added some good weapons. The offense looks very potent, assuming it can stay fit. Defense is still a problem, but they decided, you look last year, the way that Kirk Cousins finished, when they went, look, we're not very good on defense, let's just outscore teams. And it worked. Eventually other teams ran out of puff. But in the back of my mind, it's still, I'd like to get on board with them. I'd like to think this could be a good little run for Washington, but ultimately it's Washington.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is there's 2 questions: is Daniel Snyder locked in a cupboard, and do we trust Scott McCloughan? Answer to question 2 is yes, we do trust Scott McCloughan because of what he's done in previous regimes, what he did in San Francisco and what he did in Seattle, and what he started to do here with this team. drafted players who played and played well. That's not something that Washington are used to. They don't usually have draft picks for a start, but when they do draft them, they're usually not very good. He has drafted players who played and played well. Jamison Crowder, Preston Smith, players like that. They've done well. So that you've got to be confident with. But Daniel Snyder is still the owner, and he still wants to medal, and he still wants to be Jerry Jones. And
good to have goals.
Yeah, not really the best goal to have, but anyway. And I just think, can they stop him from doing that? I don't know. We'll find out. I think it's the only way to describe that. We will find out. It's to be determined. Vegas 7.5 done. Road games against Ravens, Lions, Bengals, Cardinals, and Bears. Home games against Steelers, Browns, Vikings, Packers, and Panthers. Unlike the Cowboys and the Giants done, Mike Clay NFL let me know yesterday that the Washington professional football team have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. That's what happens when you win a division. You have to end up playing teams like the Panthers and the Cardinals as your other NFC teams. Vegas say 7.5 done. What say you?
I'm going to say over. Not massively over. This is not a 13-3 juggernaut. But I like what they're building. I think this team has an identity on offense. As I say, that they know this team is not going to run the ball well. I don't have great hopes for Matt Jones. He hasn't shown me anything to suggest that he can be the steady presence that Alfred Morris was for at least the first 3 years of his career. It's going to be a slight mess in the backfield. Jones will probably get the early work, but then we have the likes of Marshall, Chris Thompson. People are all going to be, mixed in to basically try and do the job of one really good stud running back. But the wide receivers, and if we throw Jordan Reed in as well, they're certainly giving Kirk Cousins enough tools to win himself a life-altering payday. It's a question of, was last year, as you say, was last year his blip, or was last year the start of something?
I looked at them, and they've just got a really tough schedule. That's just the way it is. On the road to the Bengals and the Cardinals and the Bears in late December is not fun.
It's quite cold there.
At home to the Steelers, even if they are missing Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant. Vikings, Packers, and Panthers, not easy games in any way, stretch of the imagination. Is it strange that I think this team could get better as a franchise, but their record gets a lot worse? I see them being 7-9, don't I? See it being an under, but I see them being a better franchise this season than they were last season when they went 9-7. I don't see it as a step back in terms of record. I see it as a step forward in the way the franchise is run. Now that is a fanboy statement if ever there was one. Neil, you've said there's a lot of potent weapons on offense. Who's the fantasy stud for Washington?
Deshaun Jackson.
Whoa. Okay, I was not expecting that. Talk me through it, Neil.
I like Jordan Reed. I have a lot of time for him. Very talented. He scores touchdowns. If he's going to play, he's got an exceptionally high touchdown to catch ratio. Don't like the odds of him playing 16 games. He's had a lot of concussions in his career. He's picked up other injuries as well. Deshaun Jackson, we know what he's going to do. He's, one of the fastest receivers in the game. So he's not going to do the dirty stuff underneath. He's not going to be a PPR monster. But for those boom-bust games, where he's going to go, 5, 122, I think he'll put up... I think, other than Kirk Cousins, he'll put up the most fantasy points of any Washington player. I'm not going to say he's the leader of the receiving corps because I don't think that's the type of personality he is. This is not in any way related to his exit from the Eagles. I just think he prefers to be the player rather than the leader. I think this is still Kirk Cousins' offense. It's just I think Deshaun Jackson, especially where he's going in drafts, I think he is could offer exceptional value for mid-range to late round wide receivers, and he could he could push wide receiver 2 numbers and score quite a few touchdowns because he plays the Eagles twice.
He loves doing that. Who's the fantasy dud?
Well, it's another wide receiver. I mean, this is a crowded wide receiver room. As we mentioned, you've got Deshaun Jackson, there's Jamison Crowder, there's first-round draft pick Josh Jordan Reed, as we've said. I don't know if Pierre Garçon will be on the roster come opening day. I think he scored 6 touchdowns last season. That pretty much masked the fact he was inefficient. I love calling people who are 30 old and slow, given my age, but he's old and slow. He's, you could argue that Washington are a team of slot receivers. They all should probably be utilised that way. He's coming to the end of his contract. Jackson's coming to the end of his. I just think that Jackson still has something tangible that you'd want. You're not going to pay top dollar for, but you're still going to want to pay enough for. Whereas Garçon's skill set is diminishing, and I think he's likely to lose out to Doctson as he gets fitter and becomes a bigger part of the offense, and especially Jamison Crowder, who is the slot receiver. So I'm sorry, Pierre, but time to go.
Washington professional football team. Vegas say 7.5. Dutton says over. I say under, but I like the way the franchise is going. Fantasy stud. Shockingly, it's Deshaun Jackson, but I think that's some kind of reverse jinx, so he's rubbish against the Eagles. And a fantasy dud is Pierre Garçon. Or Peter. Man. We like him. Dutton, that's our review of the NFC East, but, let's get someone who knows the NFC East. A man who's played for the Cowboys, for the Redskins, once went on holiday to New York and was born and raised as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and that is the czar of the podcasting world, Mr. Ross Tucker.
The podfather.
And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical Mains and Dutch for almost unprecedented 4 time is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman and now czar of the podcasting world. Ross can be found on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL, on the Ross Tucker football program, the Fancy Feast, Even Money, College Draft Podcast, and at tuckheads.com. Ross, how are we today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. I love it. Czar of the podcast world. I wish I was, man. Trying.
So many jobs. I don't know how you get all the time, Ross, but happy to listen to all of them and get great insight from yourself.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I really, really enjoy it, and the listeners are what make it so fun. The positive feedback I get back from them.
So let's start right at the beginning. Obviously, a highly trained former athlete, but what's the issue with Mayo, Ross? Where's the anti-dip stance come from?
I think mayonnaise is disgusting, and I would add to a lesser extent sour cream and ranch. I just don't get it. I understand why people like it, but all of them gross me out. I think that they're unnecessary, and mayonnaise is the worst by a lot. My mom was always a big fan growing up. To me, it looks like lard. The consistency is disgusting. Everything about it repulses me, and I really don't even like people that like it. Other than my mom.
I was gonna say, apart from your mum, obviously. But on food, highly trained former athlete, offensive linemen, they are big guys. You see them when they're in the league and then out, and they've lost a lot of weight. Did you have to eat a tremendous amount of the right type of foods to keep a kind of weight that you needed to be an offensive lineman in the NFL?
I think at times that is a little bit overstated. In my experience, there are some linemen that have to really eat a lot to keep their weight up, but a lot of times those were defensive linemen and guys that were really shredded and had high metabolisms. Because most of the offensive linemen I was around, they're naturally big people. And in fact, they almost have to do the opposite, which is the category I fall into, which is, you have to really be conscious of how much you eat and consciously try to limit your intake to try to keep your weight down. Because, I remember after my rookie year, I felt like I was undersized and I made a conscious effort to put weight on. But after that, it was pretty easy for me. And I would say I never really watched my food and took nutrition probably as seriously as I would have liked. I wasn't terrible with it, but knowing what we know now, I feel like I could have even been better with it.
See, my excuse is that I'm eating to try and become a defensive lineman, but I'm 35 now with bad knees and a bad back, so I think that dream might be over.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you know what, Neil? That's okay. Whatever makes you happy in life. There's a lot of people, Neil, that are fat and happy.
Jolly. I think the word usually gets attached to them. You mentioned on tuckheads.com and also on the Ross Tucker Football podcast that Dennis Green was from your neck of the woods. Obviously, sadly died last week. My question is, do you think he actually gets the credit his performances on and off the field actually warrant, considering his achievements? And it's because it just seems to me it's a lot of people who've come to the NFL quite late know him for 45 very angry seconds after the Bears game.
No, I don't think he gets enough credit for what he accomplished. I think that is probably symptomatic of a lot of coaches that either never won the Super Bowl or in his case, never got to the Super Bowl. There's other guys, to me, I don't think Marty Schottenheimer gets the credit he deserves. I don't think Dan Reeves gets the credit he deserves, but certainly Dennis Green, especially, being a minority head coach when that was really rare and having the success that he had, which especially impressive to me is the number of quarterbacks he did it with. And obviously, I don't think anybody will ever forget that 1998 season, that 1998 NFC Championship game against Atlanta. That's the one that, Vikings fans still lament to this day and just can't believe that they let that one slip through their fingers. And I wonder how much different, he'd be looked at if he just won that game and got to a Super Bowl, let alone if he had won it.
There seems to be some parallels. Obviously, he got to the playoffs quite early and often, but he had a bit of problems getting past the wild card round. It's a little bit parallel to what Marvin Lewis currently has with the Bengals, in my opinion. It's just that would Lewis's reputation or legacy be altered if they just won one occasionally?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. The difference in my mind between them is, Dennis Green eventually, won a bunch of playoff games. Not only in 1998 did they get to the conference championship game, but they did again in 2000 as well, where they were actually the favorite against the Giants and ended up losing handily in that one. But I think your point remains, which is that, it took a while for Dennis Green to really break through and start to have some postseason success. And maybe that will be the case with Marvin Lewis. I think we all believe they would have won that game against Pittsburgh last year if Andy Dalton had been healthy and available. So maybe this year is the year they break through. But that one was bad, and the San Diego game a couple years earlier was really bad as well. Those were games that, frankly, they should have won.
So, Ross, this week on the show, we're talking about the NFC East and we're going through a preview. Obviously, you grew up an Eagles fan and you played for Washington and Dallas, and you've probably been to New York multiple times. So you're a perfect person to ask about the NFC East. Do you have any early takes on the division this year?
See, I tend to think that there's three teams jumbled at the top, and that is the Redskins, the Cowboys with Romo back, and the New York Giants with the upgrades they've made. The Eagles, to me, are the only team that probably is a step behind. And look, I don't think any of these teams are really great teams. I think they'll get one team in the playoffs again, and it'll end up being 9-7, 10-6 again. And I don't think it'll be the Eagles. To me, the Eagles clearly have the worst quarterback, the worst wide receivers, and the worst cornerbacks, three vitally important positions, not to mention the fact that, they got a first-time head coach. To me, I think the Eagles will be a step behind. Those other three, I mean, you could put those three names in the hat. I could pick any one out, and I could make the argument for why I think it'll be their year. Um, and really, I can do that if you want me to. But I think people know most of the reasons. The Giants with the big upgrades on defense with free agency, Cowboys getting Romo back, and the Redskins more or less to continue, where they left off last year.
On the Eagles side of things, was me and Dutton a discussion really with a group of friends around number of quarterback changes that will happen this year. Do you? They've said, and they keep on stating that Carson Wentz isn't going to play this year. As someone you're Eagles fan, you've been to Philadelphia. Can you imagine that being the case, given the way the fan base reacts, and if they play poorly like you expect?
No, I'd be shocked if Carson Wentz didn't play this year. The only way that happens is if the Eagles are in playoff contention until the very end of the season. I don't envision that being the case. And I think that they're going to have Carson Wentz start in 2017, barring something totally unforeseen. So with that being the case, I would envision that what happens is Bradford's the quarterback until the Eagles are out of it. Then they put Wentz in, which I think probably makes a lot of sense because I think Wentz needs to get a couple starts, and it would help him to get a couple starts toward the end of this season, because I think just even if it's 2, 3, 4 games, I think that really could help him heading into next year.
Staying with the Eagles, because I am an Eagles sufferer. Obviously, they've got a lot invested in Wentz. No first round pick next year. They gave a boatload of picks to Cleveland. Of these 4 teams, do you think they're the ones that are most set up to have the bad season, as it were? I mean, say if worst comes to worst, the Eagles go 4-12. The new head coach, rookie quarterback to come in, they're not going to clean house this year. The other 3 teams all seem a little bit more volatile. That maybe say the worst came to worst, and Dallas, we wouldn't wish this on them. Went 2-14. That Jerry would probably it'd be absolutely blown up and started again. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think Garrett certainly will be under the microscope this year. I think in New York, it's Jerry Reese, the general manager. Although my guess is that they would give him more than just 1 year with these free agent additions that he brought in. And I think in Washington, everybody's probably pretty secure, maybe with the exception of Kirk Cousins, because if Kirk Cousins plays particularly bad, then maybe they would go on to, make a change at quarterback. And so there's one person on the hot seat, I would say, with every franchise, it seems like, and it's, a different person. GM for the Giants, head coach for the Cowboys, quarterback for the Redskins.
If we look, obviously, Ross, offensive line guru, everyone talks about the Dallas Cowboys and how good that offensive line is. Is it as good as advertised? And are we talking about this kind of otherworldly group of 5 players?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty good. They're clearly the best offensive line to me in the NFL. I think you can make a strong argument that 3 of them are the best at their position. If they're not the best, then they're in the discussion. So if Tyron Smith's not the best left tackle, if you go with Joe Thomas, Tyron Smith at least deserves to belong in the conversation. Same with Zach Martin. If you want to go with a guy like Marshall Yanda, I can understand that. But Zach Martin deserves to be in the conversation. Travis Frederick at center as well. And then if you look at it, I think a lot of people expect Lyle Collins to get even better this year in his second year. He had some growing pains as a rookie, but the physical ability is off the charts. And then the flip side of that is Doug Free at right tackle, who had quietly had a very solid year last year again.
So final question from me, Ross. You've mentioned Washington. I'm a Washington fan. So should I be thinking that I'm going to be overpaying Kirk Cousins a vast sum of money this time next year?
Well, I think you should be thinking and hoping that you pay Kirk Cousins a vast sum of money. I think whether or not you're overpaying would be a matter of semantics or interpretation, but my answer would be no. Because if they're giving Kirk Cousins a pretty big long-term deal with a lot of guaranteed money next year, then that means he's played very well 2 years in a row, and that you finally have a quarterback that looks like they're going to be your franchise guy for the foreseeable future. Because, the reality is, when's the last time the Redskins had that? It's been quite a long time since they had a guy that really could be the guy for 10 years. And I think if you're giving Kirk Cousins that money after this year, that means he is that guy, and you should be very thankful to have a guy like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ironic that the last time they had a quarterback like that, since then they've won 3 Super Bowls. Ross, thanks a lot for your time. We've mentioned at Ross Tucker NFL, all the podcasts, Tuckheads, anything else you want to promote right now?
No, that's the big one. I mean, I appreciate the podcast. I appreciate the shout out for tuckheads.com. I've really enjoyed the conversation with Neil and others. It's a great forum to be able to kind of go back and forth on issues that we're not able to do otherwise. So, no, those are the big ones. And hopefully everybody's already signed up to follow me on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL, or get my emails. Sign up over at rosstucker.com to get my emails. I don't think you want to miss out on some of the stories I tell from my time in the league.
Fantastic, Ross. Thanks a lot for your time.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Dutton, that was the brilliant Ross Tucker there talking podcast and why he doesn't like mayonnaise.
It's a controversial view, but ultimately, I think we have to respect his judgment on this.
He, as we said, he is the podcast star and he knows a lot about NFL and offensive line, so we're going to let him off on one slip of that being mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Dutton, this has been the fanboy edition of Wax and Lyrical. We've talked about your Eagles, my Washington professional football team. We've talked about 2 teams we hate, the Giants and Cowboys. Next week will probably be a bit less fanboyish when I believe we'll talk about the AFC East.
Is it really in that division to talk about?
I think we'll find out. There's probably a few things, yeah. This has been Wax and Lyrical. Get used to it.